project, but basically I've been interviewing various people representing various archetypes of humanity, whether it's scientists or religious leaders or people such as yourself or philosophers, and asking them basically how they see the world and where we're going, how we're evolving.
Right.
So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be asking you some questions you might not get asked too often publicly. But,
right. For that, yeah, exactly. Great.
Yeah. So how would you describe the current state of the world?
Well, at the moment the world is in quite a disconnected state, certainly as humans anyway, and to the extent that we've become so disconnected from nature, nature is struggling at the hands of what humans are doing. What we're doing and what we're not doing, how we're not being related anymore. So I think really that the humans are suffering from a great separation sickness. And I do believe that humans are suffering from a great separation sickness that has obvious effects on all other beings on the planet at the moment.
So do you think that we are an innately conflicted species?
This phenomenon of disconnection and separation certainly seems to be a modern ailment. And if we look back 12,000 years ago or further, we find that the ways that our species and our ancestors, our human ancestors, were related to their natural environments were very different. Humans didn't have this superiority complex. They didn't deem to know better or to be above the other species, and truly regarded all other aspects of nature as fellow beings of equal value. I don't think we're inherently conflicted, but I do trust that in some way our journey of separation and going fully into duality is one way in which we are being set up to learn, to integrate, to come back into unity consciousness. So it's part of some mysterious opportunity for us to heal the polarity within ourselves and in our ways of interacting with the rest of the world.
It just seems to be a shame that we seem to be taking a lot of species with us through our journey of self-realization.
Yeah, absolutely. That's precisely my lament, is that on our way to our selfish learning, we're dragging a whole lot down with us. And I have to say, what amazes me in my work with interspecies communication, again and again, particularly when I'm working with wildlife or with environments that have received unpleasant effects at the hands of man, what amazes me is how compassionate all non-humans are for us. The animals that could have long time ago risen up and trampled us all to death and just expressed their dismay and their despair at what we're doing, they don't do that. They have such compassion for the extent to which we've lost our ways, and they just stand in ongoing presence and witnessing what we're doing, and a certain kind of patience as a spiritual quality.
I was going to ask you about that, because there was another fellow that we met that was in Damanhur. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. And
Yes, I am.
He brought this machine back that you can hook up to plants, and they can kind of relate to whatever's going on. You can sort of get a sense of how they're relating to whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Whether you're singing and they'll kind of sing along or make some kind of presence felt. But what he was saying was that the plant kingdom, there is quite a bit of, he senses anger, a bit of resentment towards humanity, a bit of something. I'm not sure what the right word would be, because I'm not sure how different species feel, whatever that is. But he says that there's a bit of animosity towards humanity. But you're saying that in your relationship with mammals, I suppose, mostly, that there's not that.
Yeah, in my communications with mammals, mostly there's not this animosity towards us. That said, the species that are closest to us genetically tend to stand up and just show us who we're being and not going to take our treatment of them lying down. I'm thinking specifically of the baboons and the other of the ape and primate species that I work with. And when they are treated badly at the human-wildlife sort of conflict zones or interfaces, they tend to stand up and give us back what we're giving them as the very strong mirrors that they are to us. Perhaps because they're more closely related to us, there's that opportunity and that similarity and that mirroring. And in my communications with plants and with more wild species who might be lucky enough not to have anything to do with humans ever in their physical lifetimes, they certainly are aware globally and environmentally of the impacts that we are having. And there certainly is a kind of despair. There's a kind of a sense of loss, not only for what they have lost, but for a sense of great sadness at what we have lost too. So they have to some degree given up on us, if I can put it that way. But I wouldn't say that I've experienced anything as overt as anger, and certainly not from the collective consciousness of one species towards the human species. If anything, the metaphor or the mental image might just be one of a certain species, heaving a sigh of dismay and turning their back on us and silently walking off into the sunset that we've prematurely created for them.
How do you experience that communication? Can you describe that?
Experiencing telepathic communication from another species is very interesting, particularly the further away from human that species is. All that's really happening on the quantum level is that their emissions, their vibrations of their state of being or emotions or thoughts, if they have brains like we're used to and have that kind of cognition, all these emissions, their states of health, are just radiating quietly on a quantum level in unseen ways to us humans. And an interspecies communicator is someone who will make themselves quiet enough and centered enough to shut out all the usual kinds of five sensory stuff and really focus on the intuitive incoming information. How I experience the communication myself on a content level has nothing at all to do with how that animal is choosing to send the information. It's a matter of purely receiving the incoming unconscious information or data, and then an internal translation process happens. That incoming intuitive data runs against my mental database of my stored life experiences, smell, tastes, words, mental images. And when one of those things registers in my mind, when the closest match is found, then a word might pop into my head. And it does not mean that the elephant has, said to me, green tree. I might just get the mental image of green tree or the words green tree in my mind as the internal human translation process. But if I have asked that elephant, what is your favorite kind of food? They have sensed the energy of my question and are just showing me their truth in the quantum way that is a universal language between all beings, and in the language that is happening all the time between different species out there too. This is not just about us human animals connecting with non-human. It's happening out there the whole time between the plants and the animals who browse them, between the birds and the other animals that they are alerting to dangers. It's happening out there the whole time, this lovely, rich tapestry of communication, like some wonderful choir singing the whole time.
So how do you hone that awareness?
Excuse me?
How do you hone your awareness? Or was it something that just happened, or was it something you honed?
Honing this kind of communication skill is something that's absolutely accessible to every single person on the planet. I wasn't born with special skills or dropped on my head as a baby or anything bizarre. This is something that is inherently part of the blueprint of the design of our brains, and it is how our ancestors used to relate to the world and how some indigenous people still do. To hone these skills or to fine-tune them simply requires becoming quiet enough from the mental chatter, akin to a certain kind of meditation. However, it's not a certain technique. There's no complicated technique or spiritual advancement level needed or anything at all. It is about accessing a quiet enough inner state to be able to hear and listen very deeply beyond the five senses. And in ordinary everyday life, we do have intuitive moments, but they tend to arise spontaneously in times of extreme intensity or when our life is in danger. Using telepathic communication is about paying attention to intuition when we want to, very intentionally, rather than waiting for it to arise spontaneously. So I use intention to clear myself and to create a connection with the one I want to communicate with. And then I simply have to be quiet and be still and listen, which is deceptively simple. It sounds easier than it is, because the great human condition of busy mind is really the thing to clear out of the way.
So what is your impression of animal awareness? How different is it from human? Can you do what you do with humans that you do with animals?
Animal awareness, non-human animal awareness, is so much more open and unrestricted than human awareness or human consciousness, I find, on an individual level. So doing telepathic communication with other humans, yes, is possible, but there's so much mental stuff to wade through to get to the real, the real underlying data. For most of us humans, it's a lifetime's journey to find out who we really are. And animals and non-animals, plants as well, they're just so authentically being who they are. They don't have the same barriers that we humans have to showing that. They don't feel shy or self-conscious about it. They just are self, and they're radiating that, like it or leave it. So communicating with humans telepathically is a little more difficult. You've got to get through more layers of the masks and the persona to get to the real deal.
Do animals project a future? I've always been curious what they do. Is that something unique to humans?
Animals don't tend to project a future, but they can have a current concern about a future based on past experiences. So animals definitely have a linear thread running and cognition of linear time and certainly cause and effect. This is very obvious in cases where animals have been through traumas or separation anxiety, if we look at the pet situation. And an animal who's been through a very traumatic separation or abandonment will be the kind of animal who would sit and pine or wait at the garden gate for hours when a person is out, for example. And that's because they are concerned that the person won't come back. So they can cognize future scenarios. In my work with animal-human conflict, a lot of the time I'm involved with negotiating with animals. And to do that, I have to project to them the future consequences of their actions or of different scenarios, and then see if they agree to the most helpful and most healthy scenario instead. Same situation applies in warning animals about danger, and I use this a lot with wildlife who are being poached or hunted, or even my own cats on the nearby road in which there's a lot of traffic. So if I project the quantum holograph or the mental image of what might happen if my cats go out onto a road, and give them the strong mental image of big truck tires running over them and feelings of pain, they get that. They get that possible future scenario and then avoid the road.
Wow, that must be an amazing feeling to relate to another species like that.
It's very rewarding when the animals agree to shift current behavior based on their understanding of a future outcome. And I have so many human clients find that behavioral issues can right away be sorted out when the animal understands the possible consequences and really gets it and chooses to shift. It takes away the need for all the more traditional methods of behavior modification therapies or positive reinforcement. In one communication, you can just right away clear up any misunderstandings or explain the consequences of something, and the animal can make an informed choice. And if they're in agreement, just right away change their behavior, as long as their needs that are driving their behavior can still be met in some healthy way.
So what do you think it's going to take for humanity to actually alter their view of the world? Because it seems like you say, we're so separated from even this concept that most people will be skeptical of it. How do you think that humanity is going to be able to survive what we're going through right now, when it seems like we're coming to the crunch in so many ways?
Well, just a little snippet to refer to one thing you said is that so many people cannot any longer relate to these concepts of telepathic communication, and even folks who want to so-called learn it all. Excuse me, I'll stop that again. In modern times, most humans can't even relate to the concept of telepathic communication. For humanity to change things, for humanity to survive the current times, we really need to reconnect with non-humans, not as a concept, not sitting behind computer screens, not in virtual ways, but ironically to really get back in a five-sensory felt relationship with nature. And once we're back in direct relationship on the five-sensory level, what arises is the so-called sixth sense. What arises is a repatterning of how our minds are working. What arises is an expanded state of being. And I really think that deep nature connection is the only way for us to again know and therefore understand and therefore care about the other beings that all of our actions affect on a daily basis. What we're pouring down our drains at home and what packaging we're buying when we buy our food products, even all of these are directly affecting generations of other species. But conceptually, even climate change and so on remains concepts and remains easy for people to be somewhat disconnected when things are all about statistics and data and phenomena. Mm-hmm. I encourage every single person to get out there, take off your shoes, get out there, whether it's in your yard with a cup of tea, feet on the ground, 20 minutes a day, just get out there. And another thing that we can all do as adults is to just encourage one child in our life. If we have one child in our life, even only occasionally, to encourage their intuition. If we can be the one adult who encourages their intuition and supports and validates that child's ways of knowing things that go beyond five-sensory explanation, then we're encouraging our future generations of humans as well to have new ways of relating and being, and to trust that there are very powerful ways to come by information and to interact with others that have nothing at all to do with the information technology side of things.
Do you just take a little bit of a sideways turn here? Do you think that there is? Do you feel that there is an intelligent design, a higher power, or God, whatever you want to refer to it? Is there? Do you think there is something directing our actions?
I certainly do believe in a greater creative force, or a God, or something that does animate everything. And I'm not really a predeterminist. I don't believe that the script is laid out and this is how things are just going to happen. But I believe that there is some fantastic orchestra conductor, and to the extent that the different parts of the orchestra can get along and play in harmony, well, the result will be a beautiful symphony, or a rather chaotic, premature end to the concert.
Do you think that there is purpose? That there is an overall purpose and an individual purpose?
I certainly do believe in individual purpose. I believe that every soul has incarnated in its current form as whatever species, in whatever way would be the best vehicle for that soul to achieve its learnings in this lifetime. I certainly do believe that. And I think that therefore, in some aggregate way, there is a common purpose, whether we're talking about groups or species consciousness or even just globally. At the end of the day, obviously, our sun and our solar system is eventually going to fry this planet. So even in my days in conservation, the point is not the end goal. The point is how and who we're being along the way. And that to me is the purpose. The purpose is consciousness, and it's for us to play our part. Not for us to lead the way by any means. If anything, we're lagging behind the other species, in my opinion. But it's for us to play our part in the best way possible.
Well, it seems almost like we are the main characters on this stage, just simply because we seem to have an effect on everything else so dramatically.
We really are.
Do you ever feel despair? Do you ever feel that sense of despair?
In my early days with animal communication, I was quite confronted emotionally by the state of the nation, let's say, the state of the animal nations. And because as a professional empath, I am required to fully know and feel within myself what the others are going through, of course it was very overwhelming to experience all of that grief, despair, just no way out, kinds of realities that the wild species in particular are feeling. I then had my internal reaction to that, which was despair and getting really upset. And in a way, that put me on my spiritual path, to find ways to process my reactions to it and to be very clear what was actually the animal's feelings versus what is my own amplification, of that. And I still need to be clear as a channel. So no, I no longer personally feel despair at all. I feel despair of the others, empathically on their behalf. But personally, I don't feel despair. I'm not bummed out about where things are at. I don't think it's a one-way street at all. I don't project into the future with Armageddon scenarios. I take such delight in the life that is available, shining through the eyes of any being that I meet. And in that light and in that moment, wonderful things are possible. So projecting future scenarios doesn't feel so helpful. Again, it's right back to being present and what we as the human can do right now, today, to be in right relationship with our environment.
And in the moment, do you ever have moments of internal conflict other than despair? Do you have moments of annoyance, frustration? Just do you have
Yeah.
those moments?
I often have moments of internal conflict, particularly when I'm hearing very directly from very sincere animals what they need, perhaps even to save their lives or their ecosystem, and when I know that the humans ain't going to do a thing to actually change that. So then I have a lot of internal conflict because I've heard the full truth and the request, let's say, from the non-humans, and when I pass that on, nothing happens. And then I have to go back to the animals and say, sorry, this is just really not going to happen. Internal conflict comes up mostly to do with matters to do with the communication with humans about what nature and wildlife is saying. So that conflict came up for me quite a lot, and I really had to get over ego issues and to fully own the fact that whatever I'm hearing from nature and wildlife is not my message to edit. I'm honor bound to relay it fully, completely, no matter what the humans may think of me. I really have to pass it on as it is. So that resolves a lot of the conflict.
So, but in that moment of conflict, when you're feeling that churning and that flitter in your brain or whatever, the contraction in your belly, what do you do to center yourself?
At times of internal conflicts, the best way I know how to center myself is to switch my awareness, my brain's cognitive awareness, to my natural breathing rhythm. You might call it a mindful breathing practice. You see, my mind certainly insists on being busy all the time. And even when I am in the moment of getting telepathic communication from an animal, my brain is running several other options of possible alternate answers, past my awareness. It's so boring, but it just won't shut up either. So the best thing to do for me is to place my awareness on my breathing. It's a way to almost trick the mind, to give the mind something to do. I say to my mind, seeing as you insist on being busy, why don't you just run along and watch my breathing, seeing as I'm doing that anyway, hopefully. And with the mind busy with the breathing, it's got less of a voice to interrupt me on a content level.
So it's interesting, isn't it, that it's almost like you have to distract that, get rid of that to let something else take over. How would you describe what takes over for you when the mind is kind of out of the way?
When the mind is out of the way?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. If and when the mind is out of the way, what takes over is a seamless merging between myself and the other, really. So usually a communication involves a subject and an object, and I'm communicating with you. When the mind can fall really quiet and I'm just in a state of shared awareness or shared being with the other, the I and the you disappear. The seer and the seen disappear, and all that's left is seeing, the most beautiful state of seeing and mutual knowing. It's a mutual knowing. They know me as well as I know them in that moment, in a much more full way than linear time can even account for. And in 3 seconds of shared being with another, we can know each other fully, past, present, and future.
Another question I was curious about is wild animals and domestic animals. What is the difference in their attentions? It seems that do wild animals have the same sort of attachments that a domestic animal has?
Domestic animals have had the misfortune of living close to humans for a long time, and they develop all sorts of attachments. If you think about it, even on the most basic level, they have to rely on us entirely to have their most basic need, food, met. They've got to trust that we come home. They've got no access to food themselves.
Right.
So they've given over almost everything. And along with attachments come other things with domestic animals, like neuroses, psychoses, depressions even. Whether they've learned from us or whether they're sharing the burden with us, who knows. Wild animals, however, for example, a wild animal never gets cancer. That's just not possible. There's never been a recorded case of cancer in a wild animal. So wild animals don't have the same kinds of attachments as us. They do have very rich emotional relationships with their kin, for sure, but they certainly do not have the one major attachment, which is to physical life. In my experience, all animals regard death simply as a transition in a state of being. And of course, survival instinct and all of those physiological things will kick in appropriately, as they should. but there's no sense of emotional trauma or trying to resist the inevitable, which us humans singularly seem obsessed with.
Oh, wow, that's very cool. So, in your case, what would you say is the core value by which you measure your actions in the world? I don't know if it's a clear way of asking that question. What I'm trying to get at with people is what's your core value?
It's a very good question. So feel into that for a moment. Well, I think core value-wise, I'd say that my two core values are connection and coexistence, and that drives and informs in any moments and decisions that have to be made with other, because we're always living in relationship with our environment.
One thing I also ask everybody is if you could make a public service message for the world, what would you say if you could speak to everybody on the planet? What would you say?
If I could speak to everyone on the planet, I'd say lose your mind and come to your senses. Get out there, get into your five senses, feel the plants, sit quietly with a bird, and enjoy the sixth sense that will arise.
Awesome. Thank you very much. There's one other aspect of this project. I hope you don't mind. This is Fabi's part of the project. There's a song that's involved with the project.
Yes, I saw on the website, yeah.
So we were going to ask you if you would mind singing a line from the song. It's just like a bit of cognitive and audio dissonance in some cases.
A lot of audio dissonance in my case. I'm so out of tune, but sure. Let's go for
awesome.
it.
Thank you. Here's Fabi again.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It's very easy. It goes like this. Oh, oh, world. That's it. That's it.
Sure.
Do you want to hear it again? Yeah?
Do, thank you. And then I'll follow you right away, so my ear is closer to the sound. Yeah, cool.
Oh, oh, world.
Oh, oh, world.
Do it 2 more times, and then we'll have options and to fit it in with the rest of the singers. Everybody's doing a little snippet. Do you want me to sing it again?
My cat's just come to join me, so this might be a good moment. That's kind of funny.
A duet with your cat?
Yeah.
He likes the singing.
He does, apparently. Exactly. He's going to give me a tail in my face right now.
I'll do it one more time.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Oh, oh, world.
Oh, oh, world. Oh, oh, world.
That's
oh, oh, world.
That's awesome.
Black tail.
I love the tail.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Anna.
You're welcome.
It was
guys.
really nice to speak with you.
Likewise, we'll stay in touch. I look forward to the various versions of the finished product that are being built. Looks awesome so far. Yeah,
cool.
Great.
Good. We'll let you know when the video's up and everything else. We'll let you know.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fabi, your patience with the process. Okay.
Oh, and yours. Thank you. I'm sorry about all the difficulty, but it got done.
It's okay. Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes, bye.